What's up guys? This is going to be a video about what is probably my favorite strength method. I would class it as like a pure strength method in that most of the gains that you're going to get from this are going to be neurological in nature. This is not a method for those who are looking to bulk up or power build that need to fill out a weight class. This is a good method for someone who is kind of got to a point where they're kind of near the top of their weight category. They can't put on a lot of extra muscle and they need to start kind of eking out those extra pounds and getting every pound on the bar out of the frame that they already have. So the method that we're going to be looking at here is called the progressive range of motion training model. Okay, so if you don't know who Paul Anderson is, Google him, he is the inventor of this method way back, lifting weights that would still be considered freakish now. Okay, and essentially the principle of this method is that we're going to take the weight that we want to lift at the end of our training cycle, and we're going to lift it to a progressively greater range of motion throughout the training cycle until we are doing the full range of motion by the end of it. We've got Jaden set up here doing a high block pull. We're just going to go through some of the most common errors that we see when people set up using a progressive range of motion model in their training and just how we work about them. Okay, so if we just pan over here, you can see Jaden's got a pretty high block. Jaden, can you just set up for us? So he's above the knee, and you just go ahead and lift that for us right now. He's going to move like what, 2-3 inches maybe. So that's going to be a height that he would probably do. You can put that down. Thank you. He would probably do that height in week 2 of his progression. Like in week 1, we're probably moving like an inch and a half in most scenarios. And if you're not getting probably around 15 reps, depending on the person, then you're probably starting off with a weight that's too heavy because we're only moving that very short distance in a very mechanically advantageous position. If we're not hitting about 15 reps when we do our AMRAP sets in week 1, then it's going to taper off too fast and we're probably going to start hitting zeros before we hit the full range of motion. So what you're seeing Jaden do there is probably a good range for week 2. He's moving about maybe 2.5-3 inches. And as we can see down here, he's got it set up on about 6 blocks. So that would give him a nice easy progression model because he could start on 7 blocks and then over an 8-week cycle go down 1 block every time and then test on the 8th week. So that's a really kind of simple, easy system to set up with deadlift. With bench press, you're going to have boards and you can do a similar thing with that. Now, the things that we want to watch out for when we're doing this, first off, is the body mechanics and the alignment. So Jaden, if you can just set up for us in the position that you would be in if you are in that position of a full range of motion sumo deadlift. So this is the position we want Jaden in when he's doing his reps. Now, the problem that we can run into here is, especially when we start doing AMRAPs and we want to accumulate as many reps as possible, since he's above the knee, just go ahead and wedge under for me. So like almost support it on your quads, that's it. So what we end up in now is Jaden's knees are wedged forward and now he can almost leverage it on his quads and support the weight on his quads, which in strongman, hitching, that's totally fine. But in this scenario, we're putting him in a position that doesn't mimic where he's going to be when he does that full range of motion deadlift from the floor, and we're ingraining a bad motor pattern and we're not strengthening the right muscles. So that's the first thing that we need to watch out for when we're doing these block pulls or the board presses, whatever it might be. The second thing is that we want every rep to be done from a dead start, because at the end of the day, when we pull that 1 rep max at the end of the cycle, we don't have blocks or boards to bounce it off. So if we're going down to those blocks, hitting them and catching a stretch reflex, we're getting a stretch reflex in a position of the rep that we normally would not. So Jane, can you just do like 1 or 2 controlled reps for me? And then a couple where we kind of like purposely bounce it off the block just so people can see that it kind of makes a difference, if you like. Bouncing off and going everywhere. These are the kind of reps we want. And then what happens is you tell someone to do an AMRAP and then all of a sudden they start touching and go. And it gives them an inflated number of reps. Usually what happens is the reps start getting a little bit ugly and that they stop mimicking the positions that we want. And again, we're getting a stretch reflex and getting help to create muscle tension and force in a position where when we do the full lift, we're not going to get it. So we're not strengthening that range of motion as much as we should be. So when it comes to using the progressive range of motion system for the bench press, we can end up seeing some very similar faults that we need to watch out for to make sure we get the most from this method. And again, what we want to make sure we see when he's doing these presses with this reduced range of motion is that the mechanics and the alignment and the approach is the exact same as if that maximal load was being done for the full range of motion. So Jane's going to demonstrate what a couple of good presses will look like for us now, and then we're going to show the common faults that we often see then. So Jane, if you can just do like a set of 3 or something like that, we want to see the same bar path that we would see with the full lift, and we want to see him stay tight so that when that shoulder saver pad touches down on his chest, he's still supporting the load and he's not allowing it to sink into his chest. He's not allowing the pad to take the weight for him. The pad is basically just acting as like a depth marker. Thank you, Jane. Now, what we commonly see here when we're doing the board work or we're using these pads is we'll use them to give us some artificial support again so that we can make life easier on ourselves and we can get some extra weight out of there. So we'll either see the lifter sink into the board and kind of spring and heave it out, or in the case of the pads here, since they're quite dense, the lifter might relax and actually allow the weight to sink into the pad to almost allow them to kind of artificially relax. So now when he comes down, he's going to let the pad kind of bounce on his chest. It's going to sink and roll around. His alignment's going to change where his elbow kind of rocks behind the bar a little bit. And that is not how he's going to perform that rep when he does it at the end of his cycle with his max load. So again, we're ingraining a bad pattern. We're loading muscles in different positions that we're not going to use when it comes to the test. And we'll see a very similar thing then on the squat as well, especially if people use boxes. They'll be rocking back onto the box and going into a position that they're never going to be in when they do that full range of motion free squat at the end of the cycle. So again, if we're doing a box squat or we're doing a pin squat, we need to make sure that the bar path and the body position when we go down to that box or that pin goes down, stays stable, and then comes back up. Because at the end of the day, when we do that squat on the platform or in our test, we're not going to be going down and rocking back as if there were a box there, because there won't be a box this time. So first off, why would you want to use this method? First off, you get to lift heavy every week. So most of you are probably going to be sold right there straight away. Who doesn't want to basically max out every week but not burn themselves out? This is essentially what that allows you to do. But more importantly, it's going to desensitize your Golgi tendon organs, which are essentially little sensors that live inside the muscle spindles that tell the body that you're creating too much force. When we lift maximal loads every single week, essentially those tendon organs desensitize, and it's almost like taking the handbrake progressively off your maximal force production because the body feels safe producing that amount of force. Secondly, we're going to get a lot of time under tension and a lot of reps with maximal loads. So we're going to get a lot of neurological gains in terms of the firing rate and the twitch rate of your fast twitch muscle fibers. And then last but not least, we're going to build confidence lifting that load. So by the time that we come to lift it through our full range of motion at the end of our training cycle, whether it's 8, 10, or 12 weeks, we're going to have lifted that maximal load every single week of our training cycle leading up to that. It's not going to be something that we find intimidating anymore. And for most people, being able to go into the gym and lift a maximal load, even if it's over a short range of motion, is going to be motivating. It's going to be fun. And at the end of the day, a training system that has you motivated and makes you want to work hard is usually going to bring you better results.